So today is February 26, 2013, and we're interviewing Captain Bill Burnett, retired river pilot. And I'd just like if you could maybe tell us, Bill, what a river pilot actually does and how a boat comes up the river, and then we can get into some other stuff if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Well, the Fraser River pilots in particular, their main duty, of course, is to keep ships off the beach and keep lives safe on the waterfront from us and the ships we're piloting. The pilotage is, the district lasts all the way up to Mission, but we very, very rarely go that far. We don't do much above New Westminster, which means we have a pilotage district of some 20 miles in the river. What else could we say about it? It's
where do you pick up the boat, the ships?
Well, the official pilot station is called the Sandheads, which is a lighthouse at the mouth of the river, and we pick up the ships 3 miles out beyond the lighthouse and get a few minutes to find out what we need to know about the ship before we proceed in. A lot of it can be tidal if the ships are deeper, and that's all done prior to them arriving, and we give them times of when they can't enter the river. The river, because of the way it is on a delta, there's a lot of sediment comes down every year, and there's constant dredging. And we are updated on the dredging so that we know what water is available every day for planning our trips in and out the river. A lot of people seem to think that if you do it every day and that's all your job is, that it would be terribly boring, but river piloting is anything but boring, because even it's the same ship you go in like months apart or every week, it is never the same river. So because of the different conditions, and I doubt if I ever in the 26 years I was a pilot got the same conditions once.
Challenging job, to say the least.
It is, because we work all times of day and night and all types of weather. It really is a 24/7 job, and the only thing that really stops us is a lack of water for the ship to actually proceed.
Right. Maybe we could just get into how you became a pilot, river pilot.
Oh well, I guess I have a different story from most people on that. I was at a family wedding when I was 8 years old, and one of the other side of the family's people happened to be a pilot, Dungeness in England.
Really?
And from that time on, I never wanted to be anything else but a pilot.
Wow.
And so from the age of 8, all I ever wanted to be was go to sea, get the training, and then become a pilot. That was going all according to plan until one day, because I was going to be a Dungeness pilot, is what I thought I wanted to be.
What is that actually?
Well, Dungeness is actually the port.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The pilot station is Dungeness, and it's down not far from Dover. Dungeness is a point in the Kent coast, I guess. And you board your ships there and take them up around and into the Thames.
Oh, okay.
So that was what I wanted to be until one day I was serving my apprenticeship with Shell Tankers, and we came up the English Channel in a howling southwest gale, and we boarded a pilot at Dungeness. And the method they used to board the pilot was that a pilot boat came out and they dropped a teeny little wooden boat with a little engine on it into this terribly rough sea, and this pilot stood holding on to a little rope in the bow of this little cobble, really, with his Macintosh and his hat on, and holding his suitcase, or a briefcase,
Yeah.
and made his way in this atrocious conditions across to our vessel, where he then had to jump on to a ladder and try and get aboard as quickly as he could. He got absolutely soaked in the process, and as far as I was concerned, it could have been killed. And I thought, whoa, maybe I don't want to be a Dunn's Nest pilot after all, because I could see that this was not, the idea of being the pilot on the ship was fine, but if this is the way I had to access the ships all the time to go to work, maybe I would reconsider.
So you were working aboard vessels then?
I was an apprentice, a deck apprentice on a tanker,
Okay.
and we picked this guy up, and the waves were rolling right across the deck, and he had to come alongside and try and get on. I don't think he used a ladder. I think he just jumped aboard.
Caught a wave.
Yeah, caught a wave. So, but I still didn't really think I wasn't going to be a pilot, but then somehow I got enamored with the idea of, and I'd never been out here in the West Coast, that I wanted to come to British Columbia and do something on tugs.
Oh, really?
I know where, I must have seen something on television or something. But anyway, I went through all the process of being a mate and going up and getting my master's ticket in 1969. And, what was it, 68, December 68? Something like that, I got my master's ticket. But the last job I had before I went back to my final time at school was I'd been out here in Canada, but I was working on the East Coast. I was working on a Shell Canada tanker that never came to Canada. It went from Venezuela to Portland, Maine. There was a pipeline up to Sarnia or Montreal somehow. And so I already had an employment in Canada. So when I got my ticket, I emigrated and came to the West Coast and set about a career here. And it took a while. I didn't get onto tugs right away. I ended up with Northland Navigation on small coasters running around delivering groceries here, there and everywhere. And I was on the smallest one on the island run, and we used to do 26 stops every 5.5 days, which kept us quite busy night and day. And then I moved from there to tugs, and I was there with Vancouver Tug, which became C-SPAN. And then there was a big shuffle, and things went sour in 1971. So I wasn't here that long, but then it was like 6 months in Northland and a year and a half or something in the tugs. And I'd just been promoted, but because I'd just promoted, I was now junior on the list, bottom of the list, and I was first to go out the door. So on this cutback, so then I ended up on the train ferries. Like the two. There were a Doris York and a Greg York at that time, and one ran out of Vancouver to the island, and one ran out of the river to Victoria, to CN. One worked for CP, one for CN. So I was on the CP one for quite a long time, and then eventually I ended up as coming. I'd do trips back and forth, and then I used to be the relief master and go back and forth between the two ships, and before eventually becoming a permanent master on the Greg out at Tilbury.
Oh, really?
So I worked there for, oh lordy. Well, I was actually on that one for I was there for 15 and a half years, so I would have been on the Greg likely for 8 years running in and out of the river, and that's where I got all my river experience. And obviously only below Tilbury that way. Although I had been in the river and up and down the river on tugs for the brief time I was in tugs. I had done some and then So when I had the time in, there was a pilot's exam come up, and everybody saw you crazy trying for the river, because there's so many guys that they figured would get the nod before I did. And they said, why don't you go to the coast, because you've got a lot more coastal experience than most people. I said, well, but I just want to be a river pilot. And they said, well, fat chance you have of getting into the river pilots if you're on the C-span Greg, because 3 of the last 4 pilots that came in were off the Greg, and people are saying, hey, you know, we're not going to have any more of you.
Got to switch this around a little bit.
You know? So anyhow, I stuck to my guns, and I said, I'm going to study for that. And I studied. Did I ever study when I hit that call came? And then I went up to the exam, and everybody was saying, oh, it'll be this guy and that guy and this guy, and that'll be the first 3, and they won't be taking more than 3. So I was pleasantly surprised at the end of it to be number 2.
Nice.
And Frank was number 1.
Oh, really?
And neither of us were supposed to have a chance. So
what year would that be about?
that was 1980. Spring of 1980. And Frank was lucky because he got in right away, and I waited for 5.5 years on the list.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I didn't actually become a pilot, start my piloting until October 85.
Oh, I see. Yeah, wow.
And 5.5 years was so long that I sometimes forgot I was on the list. So I just continued working on the Greg and until I was called.
Wow.
So I had to go through 2 reviews, because every 2 years you have to go up and make sure that you still have been working in the river and you have
the hours
kept your local knowledge up and had so and then be reinstated into the list. So.
Was there, now that you're accepted, is there a formal training or?
Oh yeah. Well, the exam is actually the exam is absolutely terrifying, because you know, a lot of times if you go into exams, it's like prior to that, if you went for your certificates as a navigator, when you went for your orals, it was just a 1-on-1 with the examiner. Whereas you go into this pilot's exam, you get 2 papers, then you do orals. And the first paper, if you don't go through that, you're out the door right away, and don't get to sit the second paper. And it's amazing the amount of people that go down on it. But and then you go in for your orals, and you go in and you sit at the end of this big table, and there's 5 people, I think there's now 6, around this table questioning you. And when they said you want to get some water, it's easy to shake, your hands are shaking, it's very easy to spill the water on the table, which I did a couple of times. But it was nerve-wracking, because they start with the guy that's sitting closest to you on your left hand, and he asks questions on rules of the road, or the collision regulations and safety things. If you fail any of his questions, the interview is over.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow. Who would he be? Would he be a Coast Guard?
He's usually a retired examiner of masters and mates. So he's in the business of asking questions. But there was one case, and it didn't happen to me, because one of the things that they keep telling you, there are no trick questions. And a few years ago, there was somebody I thought would be quite a good candidate, and I think he did eventually pass. But when he told me the question that failed them, I said, well, that's a trick question. And I actually brought it up to some people, but I don't think anything was ever done, because they're supposed to give you direct questions, not no tricky ones. And it was a trick question, there was no doubt about it. So. Anyhow.
Sounds like a tough process. Sounds like a tough process.
Yeah. So then when you get in, when they call you, in the river, anyway, there's a 3-month very intense training program where you ride along with other pilots, and they try and impart knowledge and how to do things to you
Right.
before you go on your own. And it's quite a change for some people. I wasn't quite so bad because I started off on big ships and knew all about the procedures and what they were like and everything. And then, of course, I was on the ferries, which were bigger ships as too. So a lot of these guys that come in, I've never been more than on a 50, 60-foot tugboat.
Tugboat, yeah.
And I've heard that all of them have usually said this. When you're on a tugboat down at that level in the water, the river looks massive, because you're down at that level.
Yeah.
And they said once they started going on deep sea ships, they couldn't believe how narrow the river was, because all of a sudden you're looking down.
Yeah.
And some of them, I mean, the big ones with the big bows of a car ship with a bridge back, or a container ship with a whole load of containers, or even these geared bulkers, with the gantries.
Yep.
You can't even see the river ahead of you unless it's way down there. But if you're in a short stretch, you don't even see what's ahead of you.
That's what always amazed me when you look at some of them. You can't see nothing.
Yeah. So we have to. Well, docking. I mean, you can't dock from where you are. You have to go to the wing of the bridge and hang over the side, like you've seen me often enough, right? Yeah. So, but it's so you do that 3 months, and nowadays. I did it after I was finished and already a pilot, because they hadn't started. They now have a process where they send you to school in Europe, where there's a ship model training facility. And the models are not like little models, they're actually working models, and you sit aboard them. And
They're like simulators?
No, it's they're actual ships on water with engines and rudders and bow thrusters, and now some of them have tractor tugs to show you how to work with tractor tugs. And the one I went to was in France, in Port Revel, and it's an excellent course, very expensive. And then they found a cheaper place in Poland, and started sending people to Poland. And I went to Poland, and I just, the equipment wasn't bad, but the training. The training was terrible. They just did not have the skills. We were trained by pilots in France. They were retired pilots from various ports, and so they knew what they were. They were ship handlers.
Right.
Whereas when I went to Poland, the head guy was a professor who I don't know what his sea experience was at all. He was a professor at the university, and some of the pilots, or the so-called trainers, or staff there, were short sea ferry skippers, and some of them hadn't been on big ships, and they hadn't a college background, so it was a real. I thought Mickey Mouse, but anyway, compared with the French one was highly professional. So.
Do you remember your first job?
Yeah, I do. In them days, we had an awful lot of little old steel ships coming in, like carrying steel.
Yes. Worked on lots of them myself.
Yeah. And they were usually about 135, 140 metres. And they'd come in with maybe a 7 or 8 metre draft. They weren't that big, deep either. And God, I can't think of the name of it. I've got it upstairs somewhere. But anyway, I got on this thing, and it was a pleasant day, I could just say. It was and it was early January, like about the 3rd or 4th of January. But it was a nice day, and I went aboard this little steel ship, and got aboard and said hi to the captain. Didn't say it was my first job. It started at the river and put it onto the 057 first, and I get in, just inside the sandheads, and the ship broke down.
Oh no!
I know, Lordy.
Lost power?
Yeah, lost power. First ship I was ever on. Only a mile into I wasn't even up to Boy Force. I was less than a mile into the river, and it broke down.
Wow.
So my training jumped into thinking I was all ready to drop the anchor and call for tugs to come and assist us, but they got it going again, and then it broke down again before we got to the bend, and that was a short one. I don't know what they had been doing. They never tell you the truth. This is one of the things when you find out if something goes wrong. They never.
This is the crew on the ships.
Yeah. They never tell you. They'll say something, but it's 99% of the time it won't be the truth. They don't want you to know what's going on.
Right.
So anyway, after that, it went okay. And when I got up there, I says, this is my first job. I'm thankful it's over.
Yeah.
And but one of the things that, and it was funny, like, because we've got a lot of these little ships, and they were underpowered, and they had small rudders, and they were a bugger to handle in the river. And one of the things that I found out, because they just give you time, and if it was okay for water, then away you go, right? Now, if you were in a freshet and there was a big ebb tide, and you hit it at the bend with one of these things, you almost had to get down on your knees and pray that it was going to turn.
Right.
Because you'd come up to the bend, you couldn't do more than 12 knots. And flat, with everything going well, and you're maybe up against a 9 or 10 knot ebb. Right? So you get up to the bend, and here's this huge ebb tide on your starboard bow, and you're going to try and turn to starboard. And the ship says, I can't do it. So now you're running straight across at the wall on the other side. And oh my goodness, there was some scary ones like that. And then there was one time I was coming up, and there was a ferry coming down, and I came into, and we were meeting right in the bend, and I went to go to starboard, and the ship never turned, and here's this ferry coming down, and I tried to warn them of blowing 6 rapid blasts, and
That's the
and for
warning?
some reason, I don't know, they thought I was just being friendly, and they blew the whistle back. We just missed.
Wow.
But after that, the next meeting I went to the pilots, I said, look guys, this is crazy. We have to put a limit on what kind of tide we can run with these things.
Oh, okay.
If a ship can't do 16 plus, we should not be going through there in ebbs of over 9 knots. I says, it's crazy. And they all agreed, so it was changed. That was one rule we changed because of that, because it was, we are supposed to be thinking safety, and it wasn't safe to go into that bend in a 9 knot tide with a 12 knot ship.
That's kind of one of the questions I was going to ask you, how you saw changes like from when you started with those types of ships through the years. Did the ships improve, like, or? You got bigger. You got bigger, but you got also more powerful.
But when I first started, there was still an awful lot of really old clunkers, that had been through 3 and 4 and 5 ownerships, and the more they went down the chain of ownership, the less maintenance they were getting, and they were you must have worked in some. They were absolute crap, Yeah. So then, I think there was something happened in the shipping world through IMO or something, and a lot of these ships had to be, people were saying, hey, this is enough, we're not going to take your ships, and I think they were being banned and things, and of course they were now too small for the growing, burgeoning world,
Yeah.
And that was before Walmart came along. So things did start, in the old days we would have been seeing 130 metre, 140 metre ships, tons of them,
Yeah.
So when I was doing my first, this is another thing, once you start, you're
restricted?
You're restricted in size. It's nothing to do with a license. It was the pilot said this is the way we're doing it, because your license actually says you can do anything. It just says you're a pilot. So we had a 6 month, then another 6 month, then a year, and then you were fully over. Although I think they've added now because the ships were getting bigger.
You could do any size of vessel after that period of time.
So when I started, it was no problem. There was lots of little ships, because I had to do, I think I was up to 170 metres or 175 metres. Or was it even smaller? It might be smaller than that. But I had no lack of jobs when I was doing my
Apprenticing or whatever you want to call it.
my introduction, like my first few years, and yet, in the space of the 10 years, we had a pilot come in, and his first shift, he did 2 jobs, and his second shift, he did 2 or 3 jobs. And I said, this is crazy. This guy's supposed to be becoming a pilot. He's supposed to be getting training, and he's not getting any jobs. He's sitting on it at home.
Yeah. And we're doing all the jobs.
Yeah, this is crazy. So we had a meeting, pilots meeting. I said, look, we have to change this. So we said, okay, how many ships are there? So we upped them. And I think we've upped it again since then, because ships just are getting bigger.
Yeah.
And then we had to change the rules so that in case of something like this, if you see a ship, and they're all too big for the apprentice, you say, but there's one here, he's out of line. So you jump him ahead to do it, so he gets that one.
Yeah, right.
Because then he'll maybe sit in the beach for 2 or 3 days, because it can happen even yet.
Yeah.
Especially if things go down in volume, you know. And so now, I mean, you're looking at likely, in them days, the average ship would have been maybe 150, you know, like condensing them all, because they were the big ones. I mean, in them days, the big ones would have been, remember the Alunga in them?
Oh, yes. Lunga, Perella.
Yeah. Well, they were big in them days, you know. Now they're just like, 180, that's like a, you know. So I'd imagine the average now would likely be 180 metres or more, so it's gone up quite a bit. And the beams have gone up.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, before, a lot of these ships were like 22, 23 metres. Now you're Panamax at 32. Almost all of them, you know.
Was there a difference, like, you know, in the Ro-Ros, like you said, the Perellas, Alungas, Dilcaras, were they harder to handle in some cases because of the wind?
They had a big windage, but then no more than car carrier.
Yeah, well, that's kind of it, yeah.
And they were heavier, so they were actually easier. The big Ro-Ros are heavier ships than their car ships, so they were actually easier to handle in wind.
But some of them car ships were tough in the wind, weren't they?
Oh, yeah. I remember, I couldn't believe what happened in this case. I was an apprentice, and we had some strange pilots. And I don't know, do you remember Bert Whitehead?
No.
No? Oh, you went on a line crew then. But Bert was the strangest of all. And I went out, I think it was the first job I did with him, and I was apprentice, he was the pilot, and went out to take a car ship into Fraser Wharves. Howling gale of wind, and so this was in the spring, winter, like it was, because my apprenticeship was January, February, March, right?
Yeah.
And I went on, this was the first time I'd been with Bert. I once did a trip, just as an observer with him, to go through the railway bridge. Years and years, like before, that had been 7 or 8 years before that.
Fraser Mills.
Yeah, I went to Fraser Mills. And we went aboard and introduced ourselves to the captain, and it was a ship called the Atlantic Wing.
Oh, yes.
Which was actually had been a tanker or something, and had been converted into a car ship. So they had taken the deck off, stuck a box on it, put a wheelhouse up the front end, still had the wheelhouse at the back, and you had still got aboard and went up through the old wheelhouse, and it had been stripped, but it was still, you could see it was a wheelhouse, and then they had a door cut in the front, and you had to go out that door and walk right across the top of the box, and you open
right on the top of the deck.
On top of the thing.
Yeah.
And then this little wheelhouse at the other end, and so I think there might be a new Atlantic Wing, but this was the old one. It was a conversion.
Yeah, there was too.
Yeah, and so we get aboard, and it was blowing like a sowy scale, and snow and sleet, and just really, really bad. And I'm just like, this is maybe my second or third time I've been out with a pilot in my apprenticeship. And Bert says to the captain, he says, "Oh, this is my apprentice, and he'll be doing the job tonight." And I kind of,
Nice.
This guy has never seen me in action or anything. And he's saying, he's doing the job. It's the middle of the night, it's blowing like 30 knots or more, and it's snowing and sleety.
And from my point of view, Fraser Wharves is one of the most
exposed.
difficult.
Right? But in them things, of course, it was portside too. So we get in the river, and I don't know how yet I got in the river because I was unused to doing anything like this in a ship. Because this is bigger than the ships I'm supposed to be handling. Remember that? That Atlantic wing was about 190 meters or something. So it's like a couple 150, 200 feet bigger than I'm supposed to be doing.
Third bigger or whatever. Yeah.
So anyway, I managed to miss the signheads. But I was setting so bad with the tide and the wind that I have never been so close. And I was actually looking down at the lighthouse, and there was lighthouse keepers in them days, right? If there was one up, they must have been wondering what the hell was going on, because I was almost there having a cup of coffee with him.
Wow.
So I got up and I managed to struggle up and start getting a wee bit of a hang of it. Because, we were just right into the river after I took over, you know. So I got a hang of it and I got it up and we're coming up past Grand Forest, Granzella back then. And I says, "Do you want to take her and make the landing now?" He says, No, you can go ahead.
I think that'd be a little shaky.
So, and of course we didn't have big tugs then. We had 2 tugs. I think we had the Chinook and the Hi-Hat. So I spoke to them and I told them you put lines up 4 and 1/2 and go on port side too. That's all we could do in them days. But. So we got up, slowing down with this great big thing, side onto the wind at Fraser Wharves, right, and blowing right across the river. And I'm no kidding. I never went aground, but at one time I was inside the line of the dock between Rice Mills and Fraser Wharves.
Okay, yeah, I know what you mean there. Yeah.
Right? I was like almost on the beach. I mean, it wouldn't have done any damage. It would have just stopped in the mud again. But
Yeah.
I was inside the line of the dock, and I had to get the tugs in this wind to try and pull me out to get me onto the dock. Oh, I would imagine that was like the toughest job I ever had.
Really?
Close, anyway.
Yeah.
So, there was another case, bad one at Fraser Wharves, and that was in a hell of a storm, and a ship broke out. It was a Hamburg Star or something. And the wind was so strong that day you couldn't even stand up. She was lying, I guess she'd been starboard side too, or was she? But anyway, she broke nearly all her mooring lines.
Ooh.
And westerly. And I got a call at home saying, "Oh, could you get down as quick as you can if Fraser Wharves was a problem with a ship breaking out the dock?" So, like Burnaby. I drove like a madman, got there in about 20 minutes, and this ship was still hanging on, and 2 lines still on its way out in the river. And there was a tug there, and I jumped on a tug and went out and got aboard, and went up, saw what was going on, and I just said to the captain, I says, "Half ahead." He says, "And," like, because it was like pointing.
Pointing right to the...
I said, "I don't care, half ahead, come on, quick." And there was half a rack left on the drums of 2 lines.
Wow.
So I says, "Okay, when we get moving, wind up some of that things." They'd lost all their lines, so I says, "And pull all the broken lines in and turn them around." Right? And it took me, the wind we figured was doing like 80, 90 knots. It was just basically a hurricane. Yeah. And I got all the tugs that were hanging around, like anywhere, I was calling tugs, and I ended up with about 6 of them. And we'd try and get in to the dock, and you get closer and closer and closer, and then you'd have to ease the tugs off so you didn't smash the dock. Away you go again. I must have gone alongside and lost it, because you just could not judge things right to get it alongside without doing any damage.
Hammering it, yeah.
So after about 6 or 7 tries, I said, "Oh hell, I'm just going to have to hold the power to her." and do it a wee bit more. And if there's a bit of damage, there's a bit of damage. So the only thing I damaged was that walkway at the bottom end.
Yeah.
Because I was coming in at an angle. I said, I'll go into an angle and go on the corner of the dock. So I actually damaged that walkway a bit and then got her into the dock.
Not fun.
Yeah, you can't called up in the middle of the night, go to sleep and go do that, you know.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some of the things. I'm glad you talked about that, because I was going to ask you about how it was to, in the fog and river traffic.
Well, that's just the thing. I mean, but you know what one of the biggest changes in that river's been? Fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first started coming into the river, and even after I was a pilot to start, so that's like 28, 29 years ago. When it was fishing season, you saw fish. That river, down below there, would be alive. It didn't matter where you looked, there was just a massive fish jumping. Like for miles.
Right.
The whole river was alive with fish. And I have seen me now, latterly, I'd go up and down that river all summer and never see a fish jump.
Yeah, pretty sad. And I guess when there was fishing season, it was a little tricky too, right?
Oh, I'll tell you, there was one time I went aboard, now what was the name of the ship? You should remember this. It was a Blue Star boat, and they didn't often come, so it was a tramper coming over. Something Star, and it was an Aussie name. Melbourne Star, Sydney, no. Newcastle Star, anyway. It was an old star boat, wasn't a good one, wasn't a fancy one. Blue Star were never a great company anyway. But anyway, this Blue Star boat arrived, and we're going in, and it was right in the middle of sockeye season. There was an opening on, and I went aboard and said hi to the captain, and I can still see him, and he was dressed in a khaki shirt and khaki pants. And I said, well, Captain, you've got the right colour pants on today. And he says, why would that be, pilot? I said, well, unless you're a man of very strong constitution and nerve, I says, you're likely to shite yourself. He says, why? I said, well, there's fishing in the river today, and believe it or not, before we get to New Westminster, you'll have passed 1,800 gillners fishing with their nets right across the river. He says, what? I says, I'm not joking. That's how many boats are in there. So away we went. And we did all right. And you blow the whistle and they pick up, and sometimes they don't, and you'll hit a net. And one of the things, this was some of them played games with you. They'd shorten up and stop right in front of you, so they didn't have to pick any more, and figure you'd go around that side. Yeah. But one of the things we had to learn was, don't deviate
your course
unless you absolutely have to. Obviously, if you're going to run a boat down and kill somebody, you can't do it. Yeah. But don't deviate off your course, because if you go off your course and hit somebody else, you're in trouble.
You're in the trouble.
And if you hit somebody else's net by doing that, you're in trouble. They can go after you for not staying on the ranges. Well, this is another crazy thing. Stay on the ranges. Well, if you're in a ship that's 110 feet wide, the ranges are what? This wide?
Narrow.
So obviously there's like 50 feet the ship either side, and so if you're down in the water, I guess, and you're close to the ranges, you think, oh, I'm off the ranges, but you're not to a ship that wide. Mm-hmm. So, and another thing, well, I can see it now because I'm retired and nobody's going to. But if I had an idiot that was going to pick up because his net was in the way, and he stopped right in front of me to try and force me to go around that way, and there was other boats there, guess what I did?
I can imagine.
I went to port and went through his net. I was going to take his net out before I was taking some innocent guy who got out of my way. Because some of them would be, they weren't all the right way,
Oh, I know.
So if a guy is over here with his boat and there with his net, and he picks up out of my way, and this guy's this way, and he picks up and stops right in front of me, I would go that way and take his net out.
Yeah. Well, I remember hearing about sometimes they're coming up and you hear somebody say, I think he's got 3 nets. Sad as it was, but I mean,
Oh, no.
I mean, they knew, they got radios, they know.
Yeah, they listened, they heard, and then we blew the whistle all the time.
They know you're coming.
We blew and blew and blew all the way up the river. So they knew we were coming. And we'd broadcast before we even came in the river to say that we were coming. And when we got channels, we got their channels. So we switched to their channels, did our channels, and switched to their channels. And you could hear them talking about it. And their channels say, oh, there's a salty coming up, or whatever they call you. And some of them were pretty, they'd phone you and say, oh, we're up at Tilbury, how long before you be here? And we said, well, we'll be up there in 40 minutes. Okay. Yeah. Well,
that's good, yeah.
And because most of them complied, but there was always these idiots, and they lost their nets.
Pushing their luck.
Yeah, and they lost their nets to me. But I did. The craziest one, oh my God, this guy must have wondered that I had it in for him. We were coming up, I don't know if you remember, there was a while we got these little Dutch ships that were 110 metres long, or 112. And they were like bloody shoeboxes, There was totally no design to them. They took a square and knocked a few edges off it and said, that's a ship, right? And they were as wide at the front as they were at the back. They it was just like driving a shoebox, right?
Really?
That's what I used to say they were. And they were 110, and they could really load them. They would come in with over 9 metre drafts.
Wow.
So you're trying to drive a loaded shoebox filled with lead up a river with a little engine and a little bloody rudder. And I mean, you had to watch it so carefully and just move the rudder a wee bit and don't let her start turning big time. I remember one guy got on, came up, started her, went up to full ahead, come up to the river, turned to go into the river and did a complete circle. It might be me. But anyway, if you got them turning too fast, you couldn't stop them because the rudders weren't big enough in the shape of the ship. The rudder wouldn't do anything.
Right.
So I came up the river one day in fishing with one of these guys, and we were going up to Vito's, and there was a guy who didn't pick up for me, and I thought, oh God, what am I doing here? And because I didn't have anything much control of this bloody thing, right? So how did it happen? He got in my way. At the last moment, he started picking up, and he was getting in my way, and I had to alter to starboard. Well, I had to crank the wheel to get her going, to miss him, because they're all close quarter situations. Well, the ship just took off. I went hard a port after I got in, and nothing happened. She just kept turning. So I went through his net, and through his net. Except the third time I took the net with me because it didn't bust because there was nothing tied on to it.
It's an eye-opener.
Oh, and I mean that ship turned at full speed, completely round off Vito's.
Wow.
Accidentally. I mean, you imagine what your knees are like and anything like that, But it's the same as though. I think
must be a nice feeling to get it straightened out.
Yeah. That's like,
and you're not far from the bridge there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, you know that starboat when I was coming up and I told the skipper we'd be meeting all these boats. We were coming up there, and everything was fine, and boats were picking up, and I don't think we ran any nets that day. But we're coming up around the turn, going into the bridge, and there was a C-span tug coming down with 2 scows, coming this way down on that side, and I'm coming like this, and we'd steadied up on our course, and we're coming up to the bridge, and I'm just sitting there, looking out the window, talking to the captain, but anything in general, not. And all of a sudden the ship took off to port. And I said, what's going on? Look, the guy had a wheel hard over. I says, midships, what the hell are you doing? Hard starboard. I never did find out what that guy did. We started turning right as we're getting up the bridge, right at the C-span dug.
Jeez.
And somehow I managed to get it turned and we just missed them.
Did he think he'd seen something?
No, I don't know what. Don't know.
Wow.
He might have been like something I said to the captain, or something must have sounded like something. And this is always a danger. About, like, if you have, this is one of the things with foreign crew that don't understand the language. They know things that they react to, like sounds.
Oh, okay.
So it sounds like hard to port.
Because that's what I was going to ask you. Some of the language barriers
Yeah.
were a little tough sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, language barriers were immense, you know. Still are. And
That can create, like you say, a pretty big safety issue.
oh yeah, it is. It is. And the funny thing is, English is the language of the sea, and everybody's supposed to be speaking English on the bridge of that ship, and it doesn't happen. We even have it on our cards that we used to give them. That all conversation on in the wheelers has to be in English. And they don't do it. So what do you do? You know, and it is a problem because you can say something and it can be completely misconstrued.
Taken the other way.
Yeah. And you had to be very careful when you were talking and telling stories to the captain. He was, you know, that you didn't use anything that sounded like a halmord or whatever.
Right.
You know? And one of the things is that you end up like these people are being taught English in their native land. So somebody gets to speak English and then they become an English teacher, and then some of the people they teach become English teachers. By the time they're 3 or 4 through it, you wouldn't recognise the English language, and this is the problem, right? So somebody who, to me, would be fairly dodgy on their conversational skills in English is teaching English to the next generation and the next generation. So you end up with people that think they're speaking English and you have no idea what they're saying. You know?
Pretty tough.
So it ends up that you become a very silent wheelhouse because you can't.
You just want to make sure you give them the right order.
But you can't have a conversation with them, you know. And then you hope to hell that when you give the order, it goes the right way. And it's almost, I've seen people, like sometimes when you're busy doing things and you're shouting orders and you can't, you know, you're supposed to look at everything, but you can't, you know. And sometimes you miss it. And I've seen me, luckily, with a coast pilot sitting in the pilot chair because we're going outbound, and you say something and the pilot will say, Bill, they went the wrong way. Because it'll happen so quick you won't notice, right?
Right. Well, it takes a long time for a ship to move once you've turned left.
Yeah, but once you got it going, and if you're not, you know, because you know, it can happen so damn quick. And if he cranks her the wrong way, when you know, I mean, if you go 21 way and he goes 20 the other, if you wanted to go 20 that way and he goes 20 that way, you got a wee bit of a problem, you know. So
you mentioned earlier about how the ships break down. Isn't there a deal where on some vessels you only got so many times to start it up?
Oh, the air?
Like,
yeah.
No
air starts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but
is that still there now, or?
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things we eventually had to do something, and when I was a chairman, I was the one that got it done. We made a card up to give everybody, and they had to write down all the stuff we wanted, right? And it was called that Master Pilot Exchange Card, MPX, and I actually developed it, Brad. So anyway, it gave a general idea of what the river was about, and told them what we expected them to do and everything, and that was where we said English only. And then we had a column that asked them different things of what we wanted, and one of them I put in was consecutive air starts. And a lot of them didn't even know what it was. And then they didn't have it on their bridge board, and some of them had to phone the engine room to ask the pilot, the chief engineer, how many air starts have. See, because consecutive air starts, it doesn't matter if you're just mucking about with going from full ahead to slow ahead. There's no air involved, right? It's only when you stop and start again, right? So if you're manoeuvring and you're ahead and you stop and go astern and then stop and go ahead and then stop and go astern and stop, or go ahead and stop and ahead and stop. Every time you start up again, it needs a hell of a lot of air coming out of the air bottles to start the engine, right? Now, what happens in some ships, their air compressors aren't big enough to get the bottles up quickly, right? So you go aboard. I've been on ships and I say, how many air starts? I say, 2, 3. I say, oh my God, we might have to be careful on this one. So I used to pride myself on being able to do it with no stops.
But so if they ran out of them, because I don't understand it myself, if they ran out of them,
yeah,
you could be dead in the water.
No, you're not dead in the water because you might be going one way or the other.
Okay, but
you don't have anything to do with it. You don't have an engine till they build the air up again.
You don't have any power.
No.
You're just floating.
If you're at stop when it happens, you can't get the engine started either way.
But you're drifting. You're just going up or down.
Yeah. You're at the mercy of whatever the wind and tide and until you get air pumped up so you can do something.
That was scary.
But most of the time you'd have tugs around.
Yeah.
You know, so it actually happened to me right in Fraser, Surrey, in in a teeny little ship with a big bulbous bow, thank God. And I went aboard and saw it, and I said, little ship was facing the wrong way, no thruster, but I said, big bow, I think. And this was typical, I guess. I don't know if it was arrogance or overconfidence. But I never, this was before the days when we did air stats. I think this was what put my head into the air stat business, because I went aboard and I said, I won't need tugs. It was only like 90 metres or something.
Oh, okay.
Right? Empty. So I thought, big bulbous bow. I'll just push her head slow, take her up on a spring like this, take her out, then I'll go, and then go.
Okay.
Go it, and then I'll be going ahead like that, stop, go astern, let go ahead, go astern, go ahead, and away you go. Right? Like a 5-point turn on a car. Right? So every time, because if you're going astern on a right-handed wheel, you're going that way, and you go that way hard as starboard, then you go like this. So I figured, okay, I'll go as far as I can on the dock, let go, back up, go ahead, back up, and away we go. Well, the only trouble was that you ran out of air in the third move. So, unfortunately, I was going towards the dock.
It's a little bit of a trouble.
And but the beauty of it was, when you're doing that, you're turning and trying, you're not using any extended power. Like, you give it a short burst of maybe half a head and hard over, then stop it. Yeah. But you do get way, but not much. Thank God. So anyway, I went slow ahead, stop, back up. So that was my first move. Come ahead, stop, go astern, stop, go ahead, stop, go astern, no air. Now I hadn't completed my turn, so it was more than, like I must maybe had 5 moves, didn't I? 4. 1 start, 2, 3, God, it may be on the third one.
Yeah.
But it was very small. But it was a small ship, so maybe it didn't have big bottles, I don't know. But he never told me he's a problem with turning. And it was either the 3rd or the 5th start, there was no air. So there was no start when I went to go astern.
And you're heading for the dock.
Yeah, and we actually did come alongside the dock. But we did. I think we damaged the capstone a wee bit, but it wasn't any major. Just kind of, I don't think we even busted it. We just kind of ground a bit of
took a little paint
concrete off it, and it was a wee bit. There was no damage to the ship, just a paint scratch. But it could have been. But that's.
Do you remember that one that broke loose or ended up into Annis's?
The what?
There's a ship.
Oh, the one that went into Annis's stern first?
Yeah.
That was before I got in.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was in the early 80s.
Oh, okay.
And Bill Clark was a pilot. But that was...
Well, I heard it lost power, that's all we heard.
No. But, and this is a fog story. And that was something, I mean, travelling in fog is one of the crazy things we had to do, and latterly after that problem in San Francisco, because a buddy of mine had hit that bridge down there.
Remember you telling me about that?
And I said, we should put minimum guidelines on that, because like airlines have it, we should have a minimum policy, but I couldn't get them to go for it. So I left without that happening. But I would have put, and I was one of the worst. I'd go in zero visibility, you know. And it was crazy. And once John did that, I thought, oh Christ, we're crazy, because what the hell, why are we risking ourselves doing this? We're not going to get any extra money in our pocket, and nobody's going to say, hey, well done. Yeah. But if you do something wrong, they'll bloody hear about it, you know. So it's not a risk-reward job, you know. So anyway, there was a foggy night, ship coming out of Fraser, Surrey, turned to go downriver. The pilot was, I won't say who he was, but he was a bit of a talker and likely asked the skipper for a beer. This was the old days, right? But it was okay to have a drink in the bridge. And he turns out around the river, and like I said, it's foggy. It's not dense fog, but it's foggy. And he sees a light roughly where the ranges are down at the bottom, beside where the bridge is. They're on the tower, you know, the high tower.
Okay, yes, yeah.
On the delta side.
Yeah.
So he sees an amber light, what he thought was an amber light, and thought it was the lower of the range lights. And he just said to the helmsman, just stay on that light. And he started talking to the captain. And thinks everything's fine every time he looks up. Well, there's that light straight ahead to him. Now, as it happens, I'm on the C-Span Greg at Tilbury at this time, waiting for my train to come down, unload me, load me, so I can go away again. And the train is never coming. So I got on the phone to the yard up at CN, like 20, you know, Portman.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I said, it's a skipper on the C-Span Greg, and just wondering where our train is. And he says, oh, it's kind of delayed. I says, why? He said, well, there's a ship on the tracks and they can't get by it. I says, come on, pull the other leg, there's got bells on it. And he says, no, he says, I'm telling you the truth, there's a ship on the tracks. So, oh God. And I went down and told the guys, well, all had a big laugh about it. So eventually the train crew showed up, and sure enough, they'd been delayed because the ship's bow was over the tracks. What had happened was, the pilot, unbeknownst to him, when he said steady on that light, it was a headlight of a Loki coming up the track, slowly, but coming up the track.
Where would that be? Just before the bridge?
Yeah.
Oh.
Up, you know where Errol used to, just near,
Yes.
just above where Errol's dock was.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and the rail line goes quite close.
Well, it's close.
The water
There's places
and
where...
this ship was one of these ships with a great long raky bow. So anyway, he'd been bullshitting with the captain and just not really paying attention to the actual what they were doing, and this guy tried to steer, and I guess eventually the train got ahead of it. And I think it might have just been a Loki because he didn't hit it.
Wow.
But anyway, he went right up on the beach, right above Errol's, and the bow right up over the track. It likely was okay because nothing actually got hit, but
Just
he was
just hit sandbar maybe, or
yeah. Well, the event, I don't think there was any. Yeah, it's all sand there anyway, coming out on that side of the river. But this ship went right aground on there.
A little scary if you were the Loki driver.
Well, I guess he mightn't have seen it though with the foggy weather. I mean, he's not looking out in the water. He's likely looking down the track, so he maybe never saw it. That was.
Our guys used to use that sometimes to a couple of occasions. When there used to be that pub down there.
Oh, yeah.
By the bridge.
Yeah, yeah. It's not there anymore.
No, it burnt down.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh.
But on occasions, to beat the traffic, guys ran up the tracks. In their 4x4s, ran up the tracks, back to Fraser Surrey Dock. On the tracks with their car.
Oh, use the track?
Yeah, yeah.
If they were late for getting up to work?
Yeah.
That'd be a bit bumpy.
A little bumpy. I wrecked one guy's car completely. Well, it was a pickup or a 4x4, whatever the hell. Blew the whole rear end out, whatever. Can you imagine being on that rail?
What happens if you met the VIA or something?
game over.
My God.
Yeah, that just kind of rang a note when you said no. I never did it, but I've heard stories. But they say you're right beside the river on them tracks. Eh?
Yeah.
Did you just wrapping up my questions that I can think of? Do you recall like ever having to get hurt? You know, were you hurt ever on the vessels because of the, you know, going up them gangplanks or ladders? Not pleasant.
Oh, I almost got dumped in the water a few times, and then one time I actually ended up off sick. Well, not sick, I was injured. I was going up a ladder, and just as I got to the top, and I had my hands
On the inside?
and
Yeah.
and the ladder slipped
Oh.
and jammed my hands between the ship's side
Yeah.
and the ladder.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it was a bloody long ladder, so, you know, I'd climbed about 30 odd feet. So there was a lot of weight in the ladder, plus me. And I'm stuck.
Ooh.
My hands are stuck beneath the ladder and I can't get them out.
Lovely.
And then to make matters worse, the crew realised what they were doing. They grabbed my arms and started pulling, and I'm screaming, "Stop! Stop!" So I actually was off work for a while because because they pulled, when they pulled, they damaged my hands, you know.
Plus hard on the shoulders.
Yeah, so.
No, those were bad ladders.
Yeah.
I hated using them.
Mm.
Jacob's ladders, what we call them.
Yeah.
Terrible ladders.
But other guys got the ladder is the worst thing. Most pilot accidents were ladder accidents, and they even instituted a ladder training program for new guys coming in. You know, it's how you
not easy to
down
go
ladders.
up. At the best of times, I only went up when we were berthed. Can you imagine going up when you're out in rough water?
Yeah,
you know?
It's a bit getting on and off. I used to think getting off was worse than getting on, right? Because if you're getting on in rough weather, you're up in the bow, you're hanging on like hell, and there's splashing and everything going on. But at least you can see what you're doing, and then you have to judge it as the ship goes up. Make sure at the top, jump on and try to climb it a couple of steps, because in case it comes back up higher the next time.
Right.
And if he doesn't get away from the ship's side, because the weather could be holding it in.
Yeah.
But what is worse is trying to come down.
You can't see.
And you have to wear all the safety equipment, so you've got all the jackets and the life, and it's, you know, you're trying to see, oh my God, then you have to try and figure, especially if it's at night time, there's not real excellent lighting, there's some lighting, you know, the boat has lights and the ship has lights, and you're trying to figure out when to do it, you know, and you got some awful, like the deckhands had to grab you, but even so, there's guys going over the side doing that.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Just for people, Bill's explaining getting on and off the vessels with the assist boat or the pilot boat to get on or off the ships when you're at the sand.
Well, you think of it, if you miss it, if you're in a big sea and it's maybe running 10, 15 feet, and you think, okay, and you let go and jump, thinking it's the top, but it's on the way down, it'll beat you down. So you're way down here, and it's starting to come up, and you boop. Yeah. Oh. So that I always thought that was the worst bit, coming off. Yeah. And because going on, you were looking at what you were going to do. You could screw up that way too. But I always thought it was way worse coming off. And I actually designed a way to pluck guys out of the water, but didn't seem to get any interest, and I didn't know how to go about it, because I would have had to patent it and all that. But
Scary.
A system where you wouldn't lose anybody. There's usually 3 or 4 pilots lost worldwide with pilot ladder accidents every year.
I can imagine. We don't see it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, one BC pilot. Well, there's more than one that lost them, but one, Derek Sonny's dad. And so Derek Sonny was a pilot boat skipper, and his dad was away to come off a ship, and in them days, the pilot boat would come alongside and sit there, and you'd come down the ladder and go on. Now it's not allowed to do that. You have to stand off until you're down, and then you come in. Because what happened in this case, the pilot boat was alongside, and Derek Sonny's dad came over the rail, and the rail snapped, and he fell headfirst onto the pilot boat.
The pilot boat went in there, it might have been able to get him out.
Yeah, if he'd gone in the water, they could have picked him up maybe.
I've heard that. Yeah. Oh,
And then a guy, what was his name? Big guy was too. He went off up at Triple Island, which is a terrible place for a power station.
that's up the coast.
Yeah. And he went in the water, and they picked him up. Well, they tried to pick him up, and they got up to him. You know, they turned the boat and went back, and he had his floater coat on, and they hooked the floater coat, but he didn't have the strap on the bottom, and they pulled it right off him, and they never saw him again.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you mentioned it, Bill. How long were you a river pilot?
26 years.
And you were also total on the river. You were
on the river. I first went in the river in 1970.
Oh, so did a lot of years on the river.
Yeah.
Seen a lot of changes.
Yeah. There's not many people around that spent that long on the river. There's still some people alive that were on it before me, like Clark, because he's 90 something now. But,
yeah.
But
would you do it again? Did you said earlier you loved that's what you wanted as a kid.
Oh yeah. Oh, I never. The job was actually great. The ship handling and everything. I just loved that.
Yeah.
You know, the way I could handle ships.
It was a little bit of a challenge all the time.
Yeah.
A little bit of different ships, different weather.
And I just had a knack for it. You know.
Yeah.
I was faster docking and undocking than Envy. Well, you must have done that.
I've seen sometimes. I was a linesman, so I've seen Bill in action a few times.
So I didn't waste time. You know, I could always figure out why are these guys stopping and starting like that to go in the dock. I would never do that. You know.
We always got a kicker, and I did when Bill would finish tying up a ship. Sometimes we'd barely got the last line on. And here's Bill, he's on the gangplank telling the crew to let that goddamn gangplank down. So he'd get off, maybe go to a curling game or something.
Yeah. No, but I was never scared to experiment. I was always figuring, like, there's different ways of doing things.
Okay.
And I developed ways so I could spin in the fog and know damn well I wouldn't hit, you know. And I'm not telling you how, because that's a secret. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to tell anybody else either. But I could turn the ship safe as hell in dense fog, not see a damn thing, and then I developed another. You know how everybody used to come up in Annis, if they're going starboard side, they come up and do a starboard turn and come alongside.
Yes.
Well, I figured out that I could do it the other way.
The other way.
Right, and I never actually stopped the way I did. I'd come up, slow down, and then make a massive turn to port. I come right alongside.
Yeah. I remember.
And I'd be around here before I ever stopped the engine.
Yeah.
You know, almost at the dock. And it was. Oh, I was always.
There was no rule that said you had to go either starboard or port.
No, but when we started doing starboard landings, because like we didn't start doing starboard landings in ebb tides until 1986 or 87, because it was one of Clark's rules that we didn't do that. We had everything was with the tide, you know, tide facing you,
right?
Which is what he didn't do when he went through Annis too, and broke his own rules and paid for it. So when we did the training, the best way they knew of doing that was to come up above the dock, turn it, and then have the ship at an angle so you had this wedge, right, and then come down like that, and let the current straighten you up.
Right? Okay.
So that's why we did that. But I found, well, if it was a big tide, I wouldn't have done that. But if the tides were like just nominal, you know, I found it in the last couple of years, I could come up like this and just turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was the hardest Fraser Wars tie-up?
Oh, yeah, Fraser Wharf could be an awful nuisance because the way that dock was built and it's sticking out a wee bit.
Yeah.
In big ebbs, it was a bugger because there was a bit shooting out at the top end of the dock.
Well, I remember sometimes we tied them up and we had so much ship, there was hardly any ship on the dock.
Yeah.
Everything was hanging over.
Oh, but then, in the bottom end.
Yeah. Christ.
Yeah, well, the worst one for that was, we didn't have it long, was that no-sack cedar. Remember it?
I remember some
a great big Roro. It was way bigger even than the than the Parala and them.
Yeah.
And it was a no-sack cedar, and I can't remember what it was before. It had been another ship that came in, and they bought it, and it was called the Cedar, and a massive big ramp and everything, and we figured out how to do it, and we had I think 90% of the ship was actually off the blooming dock.
I know. Well, I didn't see that one, but I tied up some of it. It was very similar to that to get the ramp to line up.
Yeah.
And, Bill, we need another 5 meters, And where the hell is the bow of the ship? It's a mile away, it seems, yeah.
I remember once I took a Wallania ship in to Fraser Wharf, dense fog, and it was a Wallania ship out of Hong Kong, and it was Aida, was the name. They're all opera ships, right? And the funniest thing was that the skipper was a guy I knew from school in Scotland.
Wow.
And it was dense fog, and we got in, and I turned around and put her alongside, and could just see the dock. And there was this is another big overhang job, stern ramp. And we got alongside. What the hell's that guy's name? He lived near Berwick. And he says to me, "Well, what can I tie up? Is it safe enough?" I said, "Oh, yeah, well." He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, let's say it would be better if it just stayed foggy."
You don't want to see this.
Yeah, you don't want to see what. He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're not. There is no dock below us." He says, "What?" I said, "Yeah, you go back about 120 metres, you might find a bit of dock."
Scary because I always wondered if them ships,
Well, we changed. We told them in the end that because of what it's so dodgy, and if a westerly comes up or anything, you're really stuck.
Yeah.
We made them keep a tug on standby. At one time, we just gave them the tugboat number,
call
West Tug's number, and said phone this number if it gets windy, you get a tug. And but now I think if there's so much overhang, they have to have a standby tug.
Do you remember them? We had one. I was online, so it wasn't that long ago, where we had big winds come up. We had a ship at I think AET and Fraser Wharves start busting away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bad one. We had lines all over the dock.
Yeah.
Ship's lines were everywhere because they cut them loose.
Yeah.
And just let them run right off the drums.
One was that the one that went out of. One went out of Fraser Wharves. And I don't know what they did. They dropped the anchors and I lost them.
Yeah, it could have been. I know we had one at the Wharves and at AT.
I know how that happened, but I think they had. And I wasn't working that night, and they wouldn't have got hold of me. I was at the cannery, right, having dinner. And this car ship came into the Vancouver Harbour. It came up the harbour and turned and went back, and I thought, what the hell is going on? That ship's supposed to be in the river tonight. Yeah. And that was that big wind. So
yeah, they just let them. That's what they couldn't keep them. They had to send them away.
Yeah, yeah.
The only thing they could do.
That was a hell of a carrying because then they had to get all the ropes up and then take them and transport them and get them on the ship so it could come back in.
We I can't remember how that. They had more rope on the ship or something on the one at Fraser Wharves because they brought her back in, and then we had to feed. It was like a jangle, a jumble of mess of rope, and we had to feed that back onto the. Get them and then try and untangle it all. We had to. The trucks pulling it this way and that way. And you remember Jerry Pence, one of the linesmen?
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, he was trying to do it the wrong way, and we had a mess. It was a fun day. But yeah.
Well, you wouldn't have been there then. We almost lost a pickup truck at Fraser Wharves one day, and it was icy.
Oh, I can believe it, yeah.
And they had a line towing, and I don't know if the bow swung off the ship, and the bloody truck started sliding. It couldn't do anything, right? You slide on the ice, and and he actually went over the edge. He was lucky that it didn't.
A lot of times when I drove the truck, I'd keep the door open.
Oh yeah.
Like on a situation like that where you knew it was bad winds or something might have happened. Keep the door open because they put a couple in the water. Well, I know one for sure at Deltaport. Pulled it right in. Well, what happens sometimes the two they get a what do you call it? Can't think of the proper word now. You get a backlash on the drum, and so they're picking up or they're letting go, but actually then it goes the other way.
Yeah.
and it's on the truck,
Yeah.
and there's no quick release, and away you go. She's gone. So you better be jumping out of that truck real quick.
Well, that can happen if the line overrides. It all of a sudden it's going the wrong way.
Yeah, backlash. I forget what I used to call it, but anyway, it's yeah. Well, I really appreciate that, Bill. That
That's
was
fine.
super. That was great.
Okay.
Appreciate it.